Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Zachary Green. He is an author and entrepreneur. Can you say hi, Zachary?
Hi. Great to see you today.
I'm glad you can make it. You have a very interesting background. You were in the military, became an entrepreneur, and you're trying to help people. A lot of bumps along the road, and you wanted to, I think it's great to share your story. You were in the Marines originally. How long were you in the Marines? I'm just curious.
I was in the Marines from around 1991 up to about 1999.
Wow, 8 years, right? That's a tough segment of the military. I'm not sure if what you call it. I should say segment. But so then you took that. Were you involved any? I was just curious overseas with this Afghanistan and Iraq stuff. I didn't know.
So it's interesting. That's one of the reasons I left the Marine Corps. I joined right as Desert Storm was starting. And again, that started and was over pretty much within a day or two. And I trained for 8+ years. I was in the infantry. I did artillery. I did mortars. And there was not a single combat deployment the entire time in the Marine Corps. And I was so frustrated that I was training and never got a chance to do anything that I ended up getting out. And 2 years later, September 11th happened, which obviously changed our world as we know it. And I had a lot of survivor's guilt. So I went ahead and joined our local volunteer fire department. But it's interesting because my frustration with the Marine Corps and the military is the exact opposite with a lot of people right now. And mine was I wasn't getting deployed enough. And their concern going so much that it was almost the opposite.
Right. You mentioned the Desert Storm thing. My stepfather was involved in that actually, but he was in the Army, not the Marines. So it's just people don't realize the different, why you guys are doing that. And the 9/11, that just as soon as you said that, it brings back memories for everybody. So why did you want to be involved with the fire, just to help be a fireman, volunteer fireman?
I always, ever since as a little kid, always dreamed of being a firefighter. I mean, what little kid doesn't wish something like that? It's funny, in the Marine Corps, we have a really great gift of taking things that are really fun and making them as miserable as possible. And in the fire service, we've got a really great gift where we take things that are really miserable and try to make it as fun as possible. So being married, I think our first kid was either on the way or we were planning to have our first kid. Just really wasn't a point in my life where I could go back into the military and go through that lifestyle anymore. So again, I did have to. I mean, I felt it very viscerally that I had to continue that service and continue to protect our community and our country. And the new line of the battlefield is no longer at some far off distant land. It's our backyard. And that really is what prompted me to join our local volunteer fire department.
Did you have to do, I'm assuming, additional kind of training? It wasn't just the Marine training. You had, it's really scary to be a firefighter, I think. So it's brave of you to do that.
Yeah, very significant training, hundreds upon hundreds of hours of both classroom and in person. And what I tell people, in the military, you don't know what the enemy is going to do, especially now that the new enemy doesn't really isn't a nation state anymore. It's more of a movement. And so they don't follow necessarily Geneva Convention guidelines. And, if we have prisoners, there's a very specific way that we trade our prisoners back with the enemy. Well, when you're dealing with Al-Qaeda and you're dealing with ISIS, they don't respect anything. So it's really challenging there. But in the fire service, it's physics. You know how fire works. I fought enough fires that I could walk in the front of your house and immediately tell you where that fire was going next. If it was hiding behind the walls, I could tell you where it was going. I found different ways to kill the fire, different ways to do stuff. So it was really interesting on the fire department on how much science and physics were involved, and also how alive fire is. You literally can talk to it, you can move it, you can dance with it, you can kill it, you can play with it, all in a professional setting. Very fascinating, where most people are just so scared they just see it and they immediately lock up. The ultimate goal is you never want to not be scared in the fire service. You always want to have that fear because you're dealing with really, really dangerous stuff here. But courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is having fear, looking at it head on, and still moving forward down that battle.
That's a great explanation. how you described courage. I think it's really good. And you had mentioned you you became an entrepreneur because of your firefighter experience, right? But you noticed something that needed to be fixed a little bit. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think the highlight and the hallmark of all entrepreneurship is solving a problem. And
Right.
the problem I encountered was very life and death and very real. I got lost in a fire within the first couple of weeks. It's horribly disorienting. You're in a dark environment. You've got 80 pounds of gear on. You've got big gloves and a mask on, and you lose track of not just left and right, but also sometimes what's up and down. And I was working my way down the end of a hallway and assumed that there'd be a staircase or a door there. And it turned out it was nothing. I was in a walk-in closet and I was trapped. And so eventually was able to get my wits about myself, followed the hose line back to the engine and got outside and was pretty upset. I started talking to my captain and he's making fun of me. And he's like, look, that's just something that happens to all firefighters. You have to get used to it. And that just didn't sit well with me. And so I wanted to find a way that other firefighters didn't have to experience that disorientation. And I came up with using a glow in the dark material that I actually learned first in the military. We used it on the back of our helmets. So at nighttime on operations, we could see each other, but the enemy couldn't see you because it was such a faint glow. And I found a way to make this glow really bright for a long period of time and started putting it on different types of firefighter accessories.
That is so cool. I mean, you're saving the people that are saving others, right? And your experience getting stuck in a closet, I didn't know that part. That is really freaky. Do you still do volunteer firefighting? I'm just curious.
So I've had obviously several injuries. The last one pretty much put me over. I have pretty bad shoulder dislocation. And I came back for about 6 months. And after that, the shoulder just wasn't right. Look, I'm in my late 40s now. I think I can serve my community better with my mind than with my legs and shoulders and backs. And so, yeah, I haven't fought fires in probably 3 or 4 years now.
I like that you're using your wisdom, your experience, and I think that's people like you. You're definitely a great example of resilience, and you also, my understanding, you're an author. So you wrote a book. I think it's called The Warrior Entrepreneur, right?
That's correct. So I wanted to share my story, but the problem is unless your name's Oprah Winfrey or somebody famous, no one's going to read your story other than your mom and your wife and maybe a friend or two.
Right.
So I do research on what was out there and I look back at my experiences. And so when I started that business, I made $5,000. I was selling out of the trunk of my car. I would drive from fire station to fire station and literally just knock on doors. Eventually, I realized I had something pretty special here, and I went to a trade show. And at the trade show, I've got a bunch of my firefighter buddies. We've got this tent put together with, it's like a soccer pop-up tent with, duct tape and zip ties holding it together. And we had a room that was dark enough to show the glow in the dark. Cardboard, handwritten signs. Well, we ended up having so many people in our booth that the booths next to us that were $100,000 very professionally produced booths were thanking us because our lines were going into their booth and they were able to get our follow over. We did $100,000 in sales in 3 days.
Wow.
Now, that's a great thing. No, it's not, because I had no money to buy the raw material. I had nobody to produce that level of volume. I had no way to package it, distribute it. But as a Marine and as a warrior, that improvise, overcome, adapt, find a way to accomplish your mission no matter what it takes. And that's exactly what I did. And over the next couple of years, I turned that business into about a $30 million business. A lot of ups, a lot more downs. And the purpose of the book is to share the warrior traits that I use that any of us can use to use adversity and challenge in your life to not only overcome, but prepare you for your crucible, because everybody has a crucible. It could be getting sick. It could be a divorce. It could be a bad relationship. It could be challenges at work. It could be, in my case, thinking that I was running out of money and the bank was going to foreclose on my house. And that challenge, all that resistance and difficulty I had in the Marine Corps and the fire service and growing up in schools, getting bounced around from school to school with ADHD, which, by the way, they call ADHD multitasking when you get out of school, and then it becomes this great thing. But when you're in school, it's a disability.
I've never heard that before.
No, I consider it a superpower. I can
It
do
is.
fun, not have to worry about it. And everyone's like, oh, he's a great multitasker. Nobody says, oh, he's a great ADHD student. So, showing kids like that, hey, you can use that to your advantage. And that's really what the book is I go through a series of journeys on the science of adversity and how challenge helps grow and grow and help you learn. And then you have your crucible. And at the bottom of that crucible is the abyss. The abyss represents failure, represents quitting, it represents death and sometimes. And the great philosopher Nietzsche once said, if you stare long enough into the abyss, eventually the abyss will stare back at you. And what that means is if you feel sorry for yourself, if you've got a bad situation, the more you stay in that bad situation, the harder it is to get out of it. But when you get out of it, you have to transform and change. And that's a common thread I found with not only myself, but the other entrepreneurs I interviewed and the other warriors I interviewed, ranging from FBI to CIA to Marine Corps veterans to aviators, you name it, is that resistance, crucible, recognizing there's that abyss, and then transformation. And the transformation is where you have to make a change. You're going to get right back to that crucible again. May get rid of some of those toxic relationships in your life. It may be making a change in your business or your health or whatever. My change was I stepped down as CEO from the business that I started. And I recognized that I was causing a bottleneck because I had so much control over the organization. I wouldn't share and delegate anything, that I was limiting our success. And by bringing in someone else to help me and to handle those responsibilities allowed me to free up and be more of a visionary for the company and the spokesman rather than a day-to-day.
I think that's a great point. You brought up that you were open and you realized that you needed help and you couldn't do it yourself. And a lot of people, I think, get stuck because they're not open, right, to get help from others.
Well, I had a pretty big smack in the face to let me know I was open. And sometimes that's what the guy that's always eating bad, maybe he needs that heart attack to let him know, hey, you got to make a change. And the same thing, I thought everything was going well. I was so engrossed with that journey that I never realized how bad things were becoming. And that's where that crucible really can help you out.
That's really cool. So when did you publish your book? Was it in 2020 or?
No, it just came out about a month or two ago.
Oh, I don't know why I thought it was 2020. I don't even know what year it is. Well, that's really good. I definitely recommend, your story, just the multiple stories you have, is a great example of resilience and adapting, and perseverance is so important in life because life is not easy. People always try to find the easy way out. And I think your examples are really helpful. My understanding too, you did get COVID, right? And that was not a good experience for you.
It was the most visceral, intimate experience I've had with death. And I've walked with death many times in the military and in the fire service. The book I was working on for almost 2 years, and then just kind of stopped, and it really came to a head with COVID. So I got infected by another fellow Marine. We're all hanging out at my house. We weren't social distancing or wearing masks. Again, I was in my own house. I'm a very healthy guy other than I'm overweight. I've got no medical issues. I'm on no medication, blood pressure, cholesterol, everything's fantastic. And out of nowhere, within 24 hours, I started feeling sick. And by 48 hours, it was the most intense nausea I've ever experienced in my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink for almost 10 days. I couldn't get out of the bed. And eventually I got this little tickle in my throat. And within an hour or two, it went to a cough. And all of a sudden, I couldn't catch my breath. My wife called the doctor. The doctor recommended for us to go to the hospital. She's getting the car ready. And I'm like, honey, you got to call 911. This is not a car ride. And on the way over there, they took my pulse ox. Normal pulse oxygen levels are 97, 98, 99. I was already in the high 80s.
Wow.
By the time hospital, all the rooms were full. This is December, right? The peak of COVID. We were in the hallway along with about 20 other gurneys, and it was just a madhouse. No one could even take my vitals, and I'm struggling. I mean, all I got is this little 4-liter cannula of oxygen in my nose. So thank God one of my fellow firefighters was actually working there and was able to get somebody to get some attention for me. And immediately they shot me up into the ICU, at what point my pulse oxygen now was in the 60s. So I
Oh,
should be conscious of that. And over the next 4 or 5 days, I stopped breathing 3 times. One time was a very visceral death experience. I went down the black hole, the tunnel. There was no white light at the end of the hole. It was a darkness, a blackness. I was completely stopped breathing. I don't think I flatlined, but I know my pulse was probably down to the 10s or 20s. And I remember thinking, if I could just get to the bottom of this abyss, the bottom of this hole, I could give up and there would be death waiting for me, which was so welcome because it was so hard to breathe. Just the mere fact of breathing was so difficult. I didn't want to die permanently, but I knew that if I could just die for a little bit, I could get put on the respirator and then they would intubate me. And then that way I could take a break from breathing. Now, obviously, I'm not thinking clearly, but it was so exhausting. And right there, I decided, you know what? I need that grit. I need that determination. I'm not going to fall to the bottom of that abyss. And I was able to listen to the people in the room screaming at me to breathe. I felt physical manifestation of prayer. I've never experienced anything like that. Bright white lights and faces pulling me by my ankles as I was upside down this tunnel, pulling me out. And when I got out, the next couple of days were really difficult. I was now up to 60 liters of forced air oxygen being forced into my lungs, and eventually turned it around. But I spent almost 2 weeks in the hospital. I thought I was there for a day or two. And when I came out, I decided I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to get out there and share with everybody how that warrior experience is so important. And when I talk about the abyss, and when Nietzsche talks about the abyss, it's considered more of a symbolic abyss. I saw the actual abyss. I was falling down that black hole. And when I saw the abyss, it's hard to explain because it wasn't black. It was a color that you can't explain, that was darker than black, deeper than black. And it was just, a real experience knowing that I don't want to be there. And I want to use my warrior spirit to get out and teach other people how to go through that adversity and come out stronger with it.
that is an amazing story. So when you got out of the hospital, were you able to walk? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm sure that weakens your body, right? Yeah.
I remember a day or two after being in the hospital, I walked from the bedroom to the bathroom, which is about 10 steps. And 3 steps into it, I had to sit down and I couldn't get back up because
Wow, yeah.
I was on a home oxygen tank for about another month. And at that point in time, we had just moved from Cincinnati down to Hilton Head. And I got down to Hilton Head. I was no longer on the oxygen, but we live about 100, 200 steps from the beach. And I wanted to walk to the beach, and I got about 50 steps out the front door, and I just couldn't do it. And so that was my goal, was just to walk to the ocean and get to the ocean. And once I did that, walk a little bit further. And unfortunately, I've gained a lot of weight. I've gained about 30 or 40 pounds since that experience. Part of it was the steroids. Part of it was when you put yourself into starvation. When you start eating again, your body will hold on to all those calories as fat and not digest them.
Right.
And also, I'm just not breathing as well as I could. It's almost a year now. And so I'm doing everything I can to stay moving and get active and try to lose some of this weight. But there's some long-term things that happened from COVID that, really hurt me.
Yeah, it's just your story again, guys, is what he's gone through between being a Marine, a firefighter, an entrepreneur, and then having to deal with COVID and all this. But I guess the good takeaway for me is you got your book done. You really wanted to get out there to help other people, and you're using your mind and your experience to help others. What it just made me think of, what do you think? Could you have done something different? You know what I'm saying? I know you can't change the past, but reflecting on that, anything changed? Would you have done anything different?
I really don't think, because they say hindsight's 2020. We have the benefit of
Right.
now looking back and knowing that at the time, with what I know, I would not have changed a single thing.
That's good.
Only thing I would have probably changed is I should have stayed in the Marine Corps and got my commission as an officer. But I think I know my life would be very different right now. I wouldn't change anything with the fire service. And even as an entrepreneur, I don't think I'd change a single thing. I did the best that I could with the tools that I had. Now, looking back, yeah, I probably should have brought in some more executive help early on.
Right.
I was just doing the best that I knew. And, for me, I am a very focused individual. I'm very goal oriented and I'm a warrior. And that's really what this journey for me is look, I can teach you how to become a tremendous entrepreneur. I can teach you how to become a phenomenal marketer. But my goal now is to teach people how to be a warrior and unleash that inner warrior. And my goal here is in the next few weeks just to start some really good one-on-one warrior coaching, where I put together a curriculum of basically a 3-month curriculum that takes you through all the different warrior traits and works on how we can apply those to business and to life and to through and ultimately conquer those.
So is this going to be like an online course? Or is it going to be an in-person kind of thing?
It's going to be, so my goal here is it's going to be one-on-one. So
Okay.
we'll have time for me to speak individually with people via the Zoom or the phone. Then we're going to have work each week, workbook and a thing. So I don't really want to do the whole online coaching. This is going to be very individualized to each person that I work with to kind of get them through their crucible and help them get to their goals. And at the end, then you'll get a certificate and you'll be, officially certified as a graduate of the Warrior Framework course that we're going to be calling this.
Oh.
And we also have a parallel track that we're going to be using for businesses to teach them how to have the innovation of an entrepreneur, the creativity of an entrepreneur, the flexibility of an entrepreneur, but have the accountability and the discipline of the military. And I'm working with some really incredible, very high-ranking Marines and, other people that have been in service before to help with that.
That is so cool. So the first thing I thought, your people you're going to be coaching, are they going to be mostly in the beginning those that just got out of the military, or does it matter? Probably doesn't matter.
The real focus is going to be on people in the military. I think it's people that aren't in the military to teach them
Gotcha. Okay.
Mindset. I mean, the main focus will be small business owners, entrepreneurs, but it could be just someone that wants to grow their podcast or somebody that wants to kind of get through this next thing. It's going to have some kind of business background on that, because that's part of the tools that we'll be utilizing is organizational tools, accountability tools that can help you brainstorm, tools that can help you, address certain issues.
I like to what you're saying about I think I wasn't in the military, but I was a military brat. I grew up around it, and I didn't realize the discipline that I saw was really helpful for me. You know what I'm saying? That I wasn't told what to do, but it was examples that I saw, and I was a little rebellious as a teenager, but I as normal. But I just didn't realize the discipline that I was around. It helped me. Does that make sense?
And I used to think it was just discipline, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Really deep. And I don't know if you caught what you just said, but it's inspiring others to do more.
Yes.
My idea of true leadership is developing other leaders, inspiring people to do good things. In order to do that, you have to have that framework in place. It's dedication, it's integrity, it's drive, it's grit, it's all those other great intangibles. And in the military, you have to have all those intangibles. And I counsel a lot that are in the military, they're trying to make that transition to the civilian world. They say, well, I was in the infantry. I got nothing I can do to help out in the civilian world. No, not. You have leadership, you have problem solving skills, you have innovation, you have all these great tools out there. The concept between management and leadership, management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. Managers boxes off. They make sure you completed your task on time or not on time. But a leader is going to inspire you to do your best when no one's looking, to give you those intangibles, to make you want to work harder because you know that they've got your back and you've got theirs. And that's the real difference, I think, in the military, is that you get real leadership training rather than just management.
Right. And you're also, with your training, I'm thinking they want to take away some, value, what value they have and how they can help others. That's really, listen to you say all this. you know, what value can they provide with their business or what they've learned. What is the biggest takeaway you've had after your book was written? What, I mean, are you getting a lot of, I don't know, you mentioned that you live in Hilton Head. Are you like sharing that book with locals community or?
Yeah, so I've got a real privilege to be working right next to Parris Island Marine Corps Base recruit training. So I'm over there probably twice a week. I work with a lot of different groups over there, from the historical group and teaching our new young recruits and future Marines about the history of the Marine Corps. I also
Yeah.
work officers and the people that are down there that are making that transition out into the real world. You know, one of the biggest learning points with the book, in the first week, we made international bestseller status in about 3 or 4 categories in a couple different countries. It really resonated well. And the feedback I'm starting to get now is a lot of the people, you know, the book was originally written just for entrepreneurs,
Right.
but almost all the feedback I've gotten has not been from entrepreneurs. It's been from other people outside the military that said, thank you for giving me that glimpse into what a warrior goes through, and teaching about the science of adversity and how the fight or flight really is powered by the parasympathetic and sympathetic systems, and the way that your brain, the neurons communicate back and forth, and what happens when you're in an emergency situation. A warrior never gets well, I should say never, but you don't get rattled. You respect that it's in a chaotic situation.
Right.
Great quote I saw somewhere, I used in the book, and it says, you try to organize chaos in order to react, but the reality is that the chaos itself is organized. That's why it's chaos. And you don't want to try to organize chaos, because you can't. You want to embrace chaos and meet it where it is, because a lot of the frustration comes when you're trying to organize something that's not meant to be organized. When I show up to a fire scene and there's 3 or 4 radios going off, I got people jumping out of the windows, I got flames shooting out of every corner, I can't organize that.
No.
What a warrior needs to do is be able to take a large amount of information, immediately process it, compartmentalize based off of what's most important, and then start executing and delegating. That's the warrior mindset. And when we start looking at chaos in those situations and we react to it, we realize that that's really where you can excel. Where people get very frustrated when they try to organize things that just either can't be organized, or too difficult to organize, or should never be organized.
I like your perspective, right? Or embrace the chaos, and then you take out what's important in the situation. And also, you got to have some collaboration going on too, right?
Exactly.
Make
Gotta
it
have it.
happen.
Gotta team. You can't do it by yourself.
No, I like the word team. Team is an important thing, and I've always gotten more energy and more ideas when you know, in a group, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And it is so cool what you're doing. And so you mentioned your company that you have. Are you still involved with it, or you just kind of?
Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
still involved, not doing, you know, as direct, as much work as I was in the past. I've got a really great executive team. I know that I've done a very good job of hiring, because I walk into our staff meetings and I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And I'm like, man,
That's
great.
best, right? It is
Yeah,
good.
that's best. And it's not that difficult for me to be the dumbest guy in the room, because that's pretty simple. The bar's pretty low for me, at least. But you know, what I tell people is, you have this thing called regression to the mean. If you hang out around with a bunch of people that are better than you, the average is better than you're going to rise up. If you hang out with people that aren't, it's the opposite. If you have kids, they hang out with a bunch of kids that are up to no good, they're eventually going to regress to that. If they hang out with kids that like to study and do extracurriculars and help out at their church or synagogue, they're going to regress to that mean also.
Right. That's a good point. So what I'm thinking is your best advice for younger people? It doesn't necessarily have to be men, but if they're you know, I think all this stuff that's going on is going to affect education too. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we got a real problem on our hands in the last couple of years, where we've moved to this safety culture.
Yes.
Safety. We've got participation trophies for everybody. You know, that's fine when you're a young kid, you play soccer, you're 5 or 6 years old, you get a trophy, but you shouldn't start taken away, because that's your first warrior journey is sports and competition, not just sports, but competition, having winners and losers. It's okay
Yes.
to lose because that's showing you what you did wrong so you can get better from it. Some of the greatest leaders in our lifetime have learned from their failure. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times, I think, before he eventually got the light bulb to work. So that's the first one. The second one is then we get to college, which is really supposed to be the time to spread your wings and engage and to experience things outside of what you would back home. But what have we done? We've given them safe spaces. We tell them, hey, you got to have trigger warnings. We don't want people to worry about it. We're so worried about their mental health that when they do finally get out in the real world and they get challenged, they're going to be crushed. But if you take that warrior mindset and you lean into that adversity, have those discussions with people that you are so angry with that you can't believe that you would even talk to them, and talk to them, because it's A, going to make you learn, B, it's going to help build your thick skin up and resilience that you're going to need. At some point in time, you will have a crucible. You'll have a couple different crucibles. So I'd say that's the biggest learning point. The second one is for our young people, in their 20s that want to become entrepreneurs, wait. You should never be an entrepreneur before the age of 30. And the reason why is you just haven't had enough experiences to draw off of, because as an entrepreneur, you have to do 100 different things, from finance to leadership to management to marketing to production. And if you can work for a really good company that gives you a great training program, in my case, I worked for Eli Lilly, tremendous company, went to tons of their leadership development courses. I got Six Sigma certified. I did all these things, and all those things helped me prepare for when I became an entrepreneur in my 30s.
I like that example. And I know people bash some of the big organizations now too, as part of it. I learned a lot too from being the industry I was in with the big companies, but I learned, right? And then it helped me. And then, like you said, you were able to solve problems for people, and being authentic is important. That's definitely what you represent, Zachary, excuse me, can't even talk, for people to help them out. And I think it's, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The bureaucracy that I encountered at corporate America was so frustrating, but you know what? I miss the bureaucracy now in the small business, because what bureaucracy is it's multiple levels of checks and balances that make sure things get done. And yes, it's slow. And yes, there's things that cause things to go different directions. And there's people that manipulate the system. But at the end of the day, whatever your idea, your project is going to get better through that bureaucratic process. As an entrepreneur, it's just you. And for me, it wasn't the big decisions that killed me. I was pretty good at the big decisions. It was hundreds of small decisions a day that just eventually started to grind me down.
It can be overwhelming if you have too much on top of you, right? You get crushed a little bit. Is that the right word? So this is so awesome with your story. That I just like the analogies that you're using, the crucible and the abyss, and people need to just sit back and think about the situation. I think people react sometimes too much. I mean, I'm guilty of that, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you have to sit back and reflect on what you learned. And you definitely have a great background, some great experiences, and some perspectives that I never really thought about, like the crucible to the abyss. That is just so cool. So where can people learn more about you, Zachary?
So right now, the best way to get in touch with me is through the book website. That's warriorentrepreneurbook.com. Please go ahead and register there. That way you'll be able to get information about the Warrior Framework that I'm going to be launching here probably in the next month or two. In addition to that, if you're interested in getting the book or the ebook, you can buy it directly on that website. If you use the coupon code podcast 2021, podcast 2021, you get 50% off right now for the rest of the year for your listeners that happen to tune in. But also you can pick up the book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, pretty much anywhere that books are sold, called Warrior Entrepreneur. And then the best way to reach me is through LinkedIn, Zachary L. Green on LinkedIn, or my email directly, zacharylgreen@gmail.com.
That is so awesome. I so appreciate what you're doing and inspiring others and actually motivating too. And for the listeners, I will have the actual links in the description just in case you didn't catch it. But again, Zachary, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
I really enjoyed our time talking today and look forward to keeping in touch in the future.
Yes, definitely. Take care,
Take-
everybody.
See ya.